That leads us into Harvey's Hot Takes with Bryan Hayes. Bryan, we begin with Tiger Woods. He missed the cut at the PGA Championship. He has posted 11 consecutive rounds over par in majors. He says his body's good enough to win this tournament, but we know how tough Pinehurst #2 is going to be this weekend. How do you think he fares at the U.S. Open?
Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to go very well for Tiger. And as you mentioned, his body, everyone keeps talking about his body. I think we focus so much on Tiger's body, we need to focus more on his actual game, Jay. You know, I find myself doing the same thing. Well, will it be hot enough so his back's going to be okay? What about the hills for his ankles, right? Is he going out early, late? Is that better for, you know, his therapy and his massages and making sure that his stretching routine is not out of whack? We're so focused on that, and then you actually get to the actual game of golf, and I think we need to realize this guy's game just is simply not sharp. Like you mentioned, he can't shoot under par, and this is the toughest challenge in professional golf, the U.S. Open. Pinehurst #2 is going to be an absolute beast. So even if his body is in perfect shape, which will never happen again, unfortunately, and he's also not a young man anymore, I don't think we can rely on Tiger Woods' game to be sharp enough to actually compete. I don't think he's going to make the cut. I'm pulling for the guy. I think it's an incredible story. I'm still captivated by him. I think most golf fans still are. I will be tracking him shot for shot. I'm rooting for the guy to make the cut, but I still don't believe that his game is going to be sharp enough to get around that golf course and make the cut, because this is going to challenge everything. It's not just about swing speed or ball speed. It's not about practice rounds where you see him hitting these majestic shots and you're like, wow, the real Tiger's still in there. Of course, the real Tiger's still in there. He can hit some great shots, probably a lot of great shots. He'll probably do that until he's 75, 80 years old. But it's not just about some great shots. This isn't a YouTube channel. This is the U.S. Open. And I think the further we get removed from that 2019 Masters, I think it becomes more and more clear, Jay, that was the swan song.
Yeah.
That was Nicklaus in 86, right? Tiger in 19 at Augusta. I'm not sure, me personally as a golf fan, as a Tiger fan, I embraced it enough, because I'm always asking for more from this guy because he's been so great for so long. But it's been 5 years since he did that at Augusta. We see what he's all about now. The body probably is never going to be in a great spot, but I also just don't think his game's going to be in a great spot because he only shows up for major tournaments. The courses are too tough. The field's too tough. His game's simply not sharp enough.
And I think you're right. I don't think any of us embraced it enough in 2019. But, you know, at the time you thought, hey, he could win more. Maybe he's going to come back, but it just doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Let's move on to the NFL, Bryan. Mandatory mini camps are continuing. And on Tuesday, it was the New York Jets. And, Bryan, you're probably asking the same question I'm asking. Hey, did Aaron Rodgers show up to the mandatory mini camp? Well, here's his head coach, Robert Saleh.
Aaron and I spoke before OTA started. He's been very good in communication. He's been here the entire time. It's inexcused, but he had an event that was very important to him, which he communicated.
Wouldn't you love to know what this event is? So the team did not excuse him for this important event, but he attended it anyway. How shocked are you, Bryan Hayes, that there's already drama surrounding Aaron Rodgers?
I'm not shocked at all. There's always drama surrounding Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is the NFL's biggest hypocrite in terms of him looking down on the New York Jets. Now, he's not alone in that. Everybody looks down on the New York Jets. No one takes them seriously. No one believes in them. But all he does, and all he's really done since he got to New York, is lecture the Jets, right? Lecture Robert Saleh, lecture the front office, lecture his teammates on how there's too much of a circus atmosphere around the Jets. There's too much focus on non-football activities, that they don't have a winning culture, and who would be responsible for changing that? I've got an idea. The 40-year-old Super Bowl winning MVP quarterback that they've invested millions in. That's the guy who should be changing the culture. That's the guy who's claiming in Aaron Rodgers here that he wants it to be 100% focused on football, and then they get to a mandatory camp and this guy chooses a different event to show up to. It's just so typical of Aaron Rodgers. I'm not at all surprised. I think he's I'm not convinced that he's that focused on football anymore, that football is the highest priority for him. And I think the Jets are so desperate that they need him. I think they want to believe in this storybook ending as well. The idea of him blowing his Achilles out, then returning, and then being triumphant and winning a bunch of ball games. And maybe he's got enough talent, Jay, to win 8 or 9 ball games. But the idea of them actually pursuing a Super Bowl with a guy that's clearly not 100% committed right now. I just don't believe the Jets can feel confident in that. And I expect that he will continue to scold people. I expect he will continue to tell the Jets what they're doing wrong in the future when he finally does arrive. But it's a mandatory camp. And I know a lot of people are going to look down on it, say, who cares? It's June. The real stuff doesn't start until September. The fact of the matter is the offseason counts, and it really counts for a quarterback. And a quarterback who's had 4 snaps on this team. It's still a relatively new team for him. And he's got to be the guy leading the charge. And this is just one more example of Aaron Rodgers constantly being a distraction, constantly being a diva. Green Bay couldn't wait to get rid of him. New York brought him in because they felt they need him. They probably still do, but I couldn't think of a worse start, even though it is June. It's not going to stop come August into September. Aaron Rodgers will be doing podcasts. He'll be doing media. Guy was going to run for vice president like a week and a half ago. It's just crazy. It never stops with this guy. He's a soap opera. He's great content, but I just don't believe it's going to work in New York.
And we'll see if he ends up showing up on TSN's Pat McAfee show a few times this season as well. Bryan, I know you like a lot of Canadians who aren't Oiler fans, are rooting for the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup, because you'd like to see Canada finally get the Stanley Cup back north of the border. But, Bryan, as we both know, it's not looking good so far. They're down 2-0 heading home, Game 3 on Thursday. How you feeling about your Edmonton Oilers?
My Edmonton Oilers are really not doing me much favors here. I jumped on the bandwagon like a week ago, and I'm already starting to turn on them, because if the Oilers lose here, the discourse will be absolutely nauseating. What do I mean by that? The reason I was rooting for the Oilers is not because I'm on the edge of my seat saying, wow, I need this to happen. I have not been along from the ride. I'm not from Edmonton. I'm not an Oilers fan. But I have spent 30 years, like every other Canadian my age or older, hearing that it's just too tough to win, and look what happens in the U.S. What about the tax situations elsewhere? What about the facilities? What about the weather? And as we talked about a couple weeks ago, Jay, these are two polar opposites. Edmonton is a small town Canadian market. The weather's not great, but they've got the Canadian poster boy in Connor McDavid, who's the GOAT of this generation anyway, who's chasing maybe GOAT status but has to win in order for that to happen, going up against a team from South Florida, South Beach, with Matthew Tkachuk, who might be the poster boy of the Americans, and it's just not going their way, and I can't imagine it's going to go their way. I can't see any team, let alone Edmonton, the way they've been playing the last couple of games, actually beating this team for the next 5 games. And as I see this unraveling, I start to look on the horizon, and this is where my skepticism starts to come in. This is where my concern comes in for this Canadian hockey dialogue, because, again, it's been 30 years since an NHL team won a Stanley Cup. We have not had issues, though, on the international level, Jay, as you know. Yet the Four Nations Cup is coming up, and then the Olympics is right around the corner. I like Canada a lot. I like the way they're built. I think they can win, but it's not going to be easy. And there's a chance we're going to have Florida win the Stanley Cup this year. Vegas won it last year. Colorado won it. Tampa twice. That means 4 of the last 5 winners have been Tampa, Vegas, Florida. That's not Winnipeg, Ottawa, Edmonton, right? That couldn't be more southern United States and warm climates and great taxes. And there's a chance that these Americans are humming at the Four Nations Cup and the Olympic Games in 26. It's going to be tough for Canadian hockey fans. So I'm hoping Edmonton pulls out of this, but I'm not holding my breath at this point.
Finally, Bryan, I must get your opinion about this major piece of news that came out on Tuesday. Joey Chestnut, friend of the program, has been banned from the Nathan's hot dog eating contest because he's sponsored by a vegan food company that makes vegan hot dogs. I know how you feel about hot dogs, Bryan. You're not super pro hot dog, but July the 4th, it's just not going to be the same this year, is it?
No, it's not. And you're right. I hate on hot dogs. And I find the hot dog eating competition so repulsive. It's the most repulsive thing on TV. Yet it's great TV. It's great television. And Joey Chestnut is the GOAT, right? Even though I hate on hot dogs and maybe the competition is tough to get through, I appreciate greatness. And that's exactly what Joey Chestnut represents. He's Gretzky plus Brady plus Jordan. No one touches this guy. And who's making these decisions? Like a street vendor in Brooklyn? How are you getting banned from a hot dog eating contest? I've never heard anything more ludicrous in my life. And you know what's going to happen here, Jay? Because you know the way society works in 2024. There's going to be protests over this.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be fights. People are going to be going nuts. I wouldn't be shocked if Joey Chestnut's there doing his own contest, right? Like we see at Augusta, John Daly shows up and goes to a Hooters down the street. That'll be what Joey Chestnut will do here. He'll show up somewhere. He'll be eating vegan dogs. He'll be crushing the competition. And I actually kind of look forward to that type of chaos.
Actually, I agree. And in fact, of course, Harvey sponsors this segment. They've been serving Canadians for 65 years. Here's a reminder, at Harvey's, you can get delicious grilled hot dogs. Hey, Harvey's, maybe it's time for you to step in and sponsor the new Rogue Joey Chestnut hot dog eating contest. We'll workshop it with the Harvey's people. Until then, this has been Bryan Hayes.
Hot Takes is presented by Harvey's. Customize your burger and get it delivered from our app to your door. Harvey's, it's a beautiful thing.